Week 2 is in the books, and we've got a special treat for you tonight. We've got Kyle coming on from the Hockey Podcast Network, Dylan and Chris from the ArmChair GM Podcast. Let's get into it.
And John Tortorella has gone over to the Calgary Flames hallway outside their room. That's the Canucks coach outside the Calgary room. That's Brian McGrath trying to push him aside with some of the Calgary staff.
Okay, he's got to calm down.
Yep. Shane O'Brien in the doorway with his gear off. This is outside the Calgary Flames dressing room.
There goes Quinn Malarchuk, the goalie coach for the Flames.
Burrows came over to help out his coach as well.
Well, welcome to the ArmChair GM Podcast. We got Chris, we got Dylan, and we got our buddy Kyle joining us for an episode. Going to talk a little bit about our games against Pittsburgh and Carolina, a couple of nice wins, and talk about our upcoming week with the Oilers. And I'm not even sure who else we're playing, but we'll have to talk about that in a minute.
So, Kyle comes to us from the actual Hockey Podcast Network. This gentleman actually works for the crew, which is amazing. I'm super stoked to have you on, Kyle.
Yeah, appreciate. Yeah, thanks guys for taking the time. And my first ever time on a podcast. So about
really?
about to butcher about 50 words here. So
It's all good. It's all good. Dylan does it like per sentence. It's fine.
yeah,
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
It adds to the flair of the thing.
cool. Beautiful.
Woo. Yeah. So, recap real quick. And by real quick, I mean at least 5 minutes. Carolina comes to town. Who scores the OT winner?
Mr. Tylerton Foley himself.
God
Yeah.
damn. The person that
Yeah,
everybody
Mr.
says
Foley.
should not be
Yeah.
a first line winger, which
Yeah,
I'm not completely sold on him actually being a first line winger, but he's sure playing the part because he's getting a shit ton of points.
Well, he's pretty good on the power play.
He's great on the power play. He's been great
yeah,
in non 5-on-5 situations.
Yeah.
And I can't even begin to have a complaint about him at this point, to be honest with you. It's been
No.
a lot of
be
fun.
nice to see some 5-on-5 get going a little bit,
Yeah.
but
From that whole
Um,
first line for sure.
yeah. But I mean, before you kind of roll on with the recap, pose the question, like, does it concern you that this top line hasn't scored 5-on-5 yet, or is it something that these teams should be worried about, that these guys are, now beating Carolina and Pittsburgh? You're 5-1 and your top line hasn't scored yet.
That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, that's
Right?
where I'm at as well. I think the team should be worried because once Lindholm and Huberdeau really start gelling,
Yeah.
holy shit, like that's going to be a real nice looking line.
Yeah,
Like that game, like if Lindholm and Huberdeau were on against Pittsburgh, that probably would have been more like a 7-1 game or something like it. Like
Yeah.
we're handing teams their asses, like really good
100%.
teams, and our two, in theory, best offensive players aren't lighting it up. So
That's right.
Yeah.
once they start lighting it up, we're gonna be even better. I'm not
Yep.
overly worried about it. My only thing about Toffoli was that he was kind of looking down at the puck too much and wasn't looking at the net before he was shooting. He's
Yep.
not done that twice all season, and he scored both times. It looked at the net and shot without hesitation. That's
Yeah.
the only thing. I think it might have been a confidence thing, but it's something I'm going to keep an eye on over the next little while, because if he can corral those passes, I think that's the biggest thing too with Huberdeau and Lindholm is Huberdeau's passes are way stronger than Johnny's.
Yeah.
And he's used to those little muffin passes, which are right on the tape and very effective, don't get me wrong, but it's just learning Huberdeau's tendencies and being able to actually accept the pass without it bouncing off the stick.
Yeah, that's I found that too, right? He's actually trying to take the pass and then decide to shoot. Where
Yeah.
once they really start getting some chemistry going, they won't be taking the pass. He's just going to be shooting as the puck's coming because they're going to know where it's going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Toffoli is a shooter. And once he gets that confidence back that he can actually shoot without looking at the puck at all times, it's going to be a beautiful thing. That
Absolutely.
And that's, for sure. That's something that you want, right? Because you're relying as you're going on in this season, right? As these months kind of come along, you got to start looking at these guys thinking, who's going to be the guy that's going to put the puck in the net? You no longer have these, this top line that they had last year. It's best line in the NHL if we're mentioning that. I mean, now you have to look at these guys. Okay, well, Huberdeau, you bring him over. It's great that he's setting up the franchise record in Florida with all these assists. Lindholm's got a 40 goals, and Toffoli, he had good production when he came over last year, and Mangiapane had 35 goals, and and that sort of thing. And just something that I'm personally going to watch for as the season goes along. Who's stepping up, right? Who's going to start creating for that new role, right? And maybe this is a conversation for when January starts rolling around. But if Toffoli for some reason starts to fall off, who's going to be that guy, right? And that's something that you're going to want come playoff time. Knock on wood that these guys actually get there. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think if again, this is way down the road.
Yeah.
But do you look at a guy like Patrick Kane and think, what could it cost to get him maybe at the deadline, whatever, and pull a Masai Ujiri for the Toronto Raptors and say, screw it, we're all in.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you got to do. And I don't mean specifically Kane.
100%.
I like somebody like that for sure.
Yeah.
Kane would be a great on ice fit, I think. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a huge fan of him as a person, but that's besides the point. But from what I know, right? Like that could have been all bullshit too. Who knows? But
sure.
Just thinking
on ice thing. Just thinking like, even I know we're kind of running away from the Canes game a little bit. I'm just thinking back, like, it's great that they were able to tie that thing up. What stood out to me in that Hurricanes game, though, was the fact that, yes, Markstrom lets in another goal. That's first shot on net, and I think he's done that 3 times in his 4 starts.
Yeah.
It's nice that, he was able to really hold the fort down after that first period and just not allow Carolina anything. And, frankly, the defense I didn't think was, maybe after that first goal wasn't really helping me either. But, I mean, I thought that defense really started to, tighten it up a little bit for these guys. And, that's what you want to see. That's at least what I want to see out of Markstrom as the year kind of goes on. Like, he's not going to be perfect every night, but is he going to make those key saves when it's crunch time? And that's what you got to try to, like you said, like you got to build that confidence back up towards playoff time, and something you got to see, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. I totally agree. Yeah.
There's 2 keys to victory. Obviously, your number one goalie has to make saves, timely saves when they're supposed to make them, right? Has to be done. Number 2 is you have to have secondary scoring, especially when the top line is trying to figure out their shit and trying to get their groove on and get their mojo and get their chemistry. And frankly, I mean, the Kadri line has been unreal thus far.
Best in the league,
right?
Best in the league so far.
Thus far,
that second line, yeah.
I've been so impressed with Kadri. I've been eating crow for a couple of weeks now because I was one of those guys who kind of went, I don't know about Kadri, he's got a history, he's got some shit and some skeletons. But you know what? Damn all that. I don't really care. Like he's been magical, and it's really, really helped Dubé's game.
He brings an element that we need, and I think he's a great role model for both of those other guys on his line.
For sure.
For sure. And to your point about secondary scoring, Brett fucking Ritchie. Like, it's not just already? One other line. It's everybody. Backlund has been scoring. Like, Lewis put one in too, didn't he? Like, it's everyone. And like Michael Stone and Rasmus Anderson and like everybody's pitching in, and it's just so good to see, because last year was a one-line show, and this year it's proven to be a lot better.
Well, it is. Yeah, it's a 4-line show plus defense, right? Like holy shit, Michael Stone, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
But
he's really trying to
yeah.
make a case to keep his job, if and when Shillington ever shows up, right?
Yeah.
For whatever he's
Yeah.
going through.
Yeah. How do we feel about Uyghur's kind of start to the year? I know he kind of, he was a little shaky, I know, in the first game, which is understandable, but,
Yeah.
He may not be there for points, but again, when this team kind of needed to shut it down when they needed to,
Yeah.
he's really stepped up into that role. So,
Yeah,
I really like Uyghur.
Yeah.
One thing about myself there, Kyle, is one of my favorite defensemen of the past, at least more current era, is Robin Regier. From my defenseman, I don't give a shit how many points they're putting on the board. I want to see them punish the other team and shut it down.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, obviously Uyghur's not punishing the other team, but he can really shut it down when he needs to. Him and Tanev. I mean, I've been a huge supporter of Tanev since he came here. He's been unreal. But I really like that pairing.
Yeah. Could you imagine having Uyghur and Tanev, like 3 different pairs that are basically that, and Markstrom?
Yes.
That like who's getting in? Nobody's.
I dream of that. I dream of that.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, because when you brought Uyghur over, he's got that offensive style to his game. Now Sutter's basically implementing this saying, like you said, they're going to try to have this sort of shutdown defense mindset. Does it take away from what maybe Uyghur's game plan is, or is he just saying, screw it, I'm going to follow, Sutter to the very, very end, and, just kind of really follow whatever his direction is, right? So it's just kind of interesting to see that. But
I think a big reason why Gabranson was so sought after last year was because of Sutter, and he played that defense first type role, and then points came. You know what I mean? Once you get the puck out of your own zone, you're going north, and then the points come. So I think Sutter has a really good plan when it comes to defense, and I honestly think it'll benefit Uyghur quite a bit.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm not saying I believe he's going to get career numbers or anything like that, but I believe as a complete defenseman, I think he's going to improve greatly.
Like, look at Rasmus over the last 2 years. Like, since Sutter came in, like, he had that really down year, and since Sutter came in, he's gotten better and better and better and better and better. And now there's articles being written about him like entering the elite conversation. And like, you know me, Chris, I've been talking about Rasmus since we started podcasting like 3 years ago or whatever it was, and how he's going to be that guy eventually, and he's getting there. Like,
you wouldn't shut up about him like 3 years ago, and of course, me being who I am, I'm like, I don't fucking know. I mean, he's okay.
Yeah,
but you're right. You were right. I'll give you that.
Well, every once in a while. Usually, I'm fucking full of shit.
I put it on the calendar. They had to get it done one time. The year was almost over.
Oh yeah, no, I've actually got it circled from 3 years ago, just to point it out.
Yeah, just to bring it up from here and there.
Yeah,
a little thumbs up.
Yeah, and there's nothing better, right, than having all these guys who just came off career years. Like even Uyghur came off a career year in a different place. Zadorov came off a career year. Stone, I wouldn't say career year, but like career 5 weeks. Followed by a career first few weeks of this season. Like Hannafin and Anderson, everyone's coming off career years, and they're just getting better. Like Zadorov's better than he was last year. Like, I'm fucking pumped on the team.
Yeah. I mean, just fast forwarding a bit, that first period with Pittsburgh, best period of the season so far. Just the passes were great. Like, just everything just kind of seemed to come, and like everything just kind of came together, right? And I kind of brought up the stat earlier with Markstrom. He again, first shot, right? I don't know if you remember, it was a decent chance. I can't remember who it was, but I mean, after that, what was the shots were like 20-3, right? And then you kind of see as they go into first intermission, and they started talking about it, and they said, watch out, Pittsburgh's going to come out in the second period, and lo and behold, they outshot them like 20-3, right? So, it's I'm curious as to what they're talking about in the locker room at that first intermission, and thinking about what's Sutter's message to these guys, knowing that they're going to come out and knowing that Pittsburgh's going to be a better team in that second period, because we know that, that's who Crosby, Malkin, that's why they've been so consistent for so long.
Yeah,
right?
they're winners, right? They're winners.
100%. So I just, that's the expectation, knowing that they're going to come out. And I mean, yes, it was 3-1, 4-1 when it came to that point, but there were a lot of times in that second period where they had really good chances to almost tie the game, right? So, I mean, I thought they were pretty sloppy in that second period. And, you can't let those kind of guys get back into those sort of games, because they've been there, done that, and they just know in their DNA what they have to do in those situations.
Yeah. And you're right about that. And it comes back to also what we were talking about with Markstrom earlier, where, he's got to be able to make those saves, because every good team pushes back. So you need your goalies to make a good save here and there. And the last 5 periods of Markstrom has been, the second in Vezina voting last year guy that we all love so much.
And you have to think that because of the start that Markstrom's had, that first shot that came at him, it was a decent shot, and he made the save. And I can only imagine that in his brain, he just went, "Fuck yes, let's go."
Yeah, it's like that
like
monkey
he made
thing.
Remember, exactly. It's like scoring a goal after 30 games, right?
Well, yeah. Remember last year when Monahan got his first goal, and like it didn't like turn into much, but when he got his first goal after all those surgeries, and like you could just see it in his face, and like all of his teammates and everyone was just like, and like that's probably what everyone was feeling when Markstrom made one save to start the game.
That's one thing. As you said that, and I agree with what you said there. With the entire team kind of went, thank God he got that goal, which is good team chemistry, right? You could tell that there's a bond.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me the room isn't 10 times better this year.
Yes,
it
seems like they're. I mean, especially with the additions, like we have some major additions to the team. And
it's remarkable.
And they slotted in perfectly within the
group. Leadership additions too. And I mean, it's got to help also that you bring over 2 guys who like call each other their best friends.
Right.
Yep.
And like, Naz, has he played with anyone on the team? I don't know if he's played with anyone on the team, but he's still like,
no,
he seems like a really likable fella. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean he's great with media. Obviously, spending some time in Toronto will get you.
He wasn't good with media in Toronto, man. He was
but nobody is, right? Because he's getting hammered, and they're really only want to talk to him after he's done something stupid.
Yeah. And being near Toronto, they still rate this guy.
Yeah.
To this day, right? Yeah. And just for him leaving, and it's like, come on, like.
Yeah.
For him leaving, weren't they calling for his head for like half the time he was there?
Yep. Oh yeah. I don't get me started.
It's really funny, right?
That reminds me of Gaudreau. That reminds me of Gaudreau. Everyone fucking calling for his head for years, and then finally he does really well, and then leaves, and then everyone bitches that he leaves. It's like, well, that's what everyone asked for.
Yeah.
Like.
Yep. Exactly. And I was gonna say, like, bringing up what you guys were talking about, that like how much better this locker room has gotten. Well, now that makes you think about Tkachuk in particular, right? And what they were kind of mentioning somewhat in the offseason, somewhat going into the season, thinking, was there internal tension where times where you looked at Tkachuk in the playoffs and you go, he's doing these, especially in the Dallas series, like he was just
stupid
dumb shit the entire time.
Yeah.
And you got to think guys in the locker room are looking at him going, we don't need this right now, right? And as a quick example, when he's playing on floor obviously now, and they were playing Tampa the other day. Well, doesn't he slash Kucherov on a breakaway on 3-on-3, right?
Yep.
Cross checks him while he's down afterwards. Doesn't he go in the penalty box, and Tampa ends up winning the game on that power play, right?
Yeah.
So that just kind of does that kind of just translate over into that locker room a little bit, and they think, what the fuck, like.
And if you look at it, like that's kind of what Kadri was like back when he was in Toronto, right? He was a liability in the playoffs, and I feel like Tkachuk will be like that eventually. It's just right now we need guys who are, the next 3 years win now, not grow up for the next 3 years and then start winning.
Well, yeah. The best thing that ever happened to Kadri's career was leaving Toronto, right?
Oh,
He got out of that environment. He ended up going to a team that had a bunch of winners, and it just made him a better person, a better hockey player, and lo and behold, he's going to have a career year, and you heard it here first, maybe. He's having a career year this year.
I don't know. A lot of people are saying he's going to get 100 points, and I'm just like,
I'm not a 100-point guy, but I don't see why 90's out of the question.
See, I started this year because of, his average is like 60, right? So I was like, I'd be happy if he gets 60, 65, but I feel like he might hover around point per game. Might end up being around 80-ish.
Yep.
Which would be great.
You can't ask for much more than that. And I think, going into the season 2, they had Backlund at that number 2 slot. And I'm thinking, no, like he's just, I think Backlund over the years is, as great as he's been, I've never really seen him as a number 2 center. And I think I'd like to think that people would agree with that. But, just watching him now, though, like feeling so much more comfortable on that third line alongside Coleman and Lewis on that third line. I mean, you're starting to see like, he's not out there for, all these minutes that we kind of saw last year, and you cut his minutes back a little bit, and he's still providing this fantastic production at the, a couple games into the season.
He's producing better, honestly. And I was really worried about that because historically, every time he's been demoted to the third line, he's disappeared. And now I feel like there was an interview with him a couple days ago where he straight up said, like, we've got 3 really good, two-way centers, and I want to win, and I want to win here, and I'm ready to do this here now. I'm a third line center, and that's fucking awesome.
I'm sure one of the things that really helps out that situation is, in previous years, he's been demoted to the third line, where now his line mates went with him. So he still has the guys he's comfortable with, because him and Coleman play really well together, as well as Lewis, right? Lewis, it is as odd as a person he is on that line. He's very effective. I really appreciate what Lewis brings to the table, especially
me too.
In the playoffs.
People shit on him so much, and he's this like he's a really good shutdown. Like if you watch him play, like not even on the PK, but like what you want, he's a third liner right now, but what you want out of a fourth liner is somebody to get the puck, flip it to center ice like 3 times, get off. And that's what he does. Exactly. If you watch him, he will in the same play take the puck away from an opponent like 3-4 times and just get it offside and then go to the bench. And that's what you need from those guys. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't have the point production that everybody wants, but you're right. He's a fourth line / I guess third line on this team player. Mm-hmm. They're not there for points. They're there for their rugged play to wear down the other team's lines, and that's exactly what he does every single game.
Yeah. Is that something that you see maybe towards the is that an area that they might?
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed a bunch of that. I think you were going all robotic there.
I was just like, you've got this great production that you've gotten out of Lewis, shockingly, on this third line. You got to think they, understandingly so. I think, injuries are, knock on wood, bound to happen. But I mean, you got to think that they have to at least upgrade the third line come that trade deadline time, and try not to give up a 4th round pick for Ryan Carpenter, who played 2 games or whatever that was. And Yarncroke shows up last year and wasn't really that inspiring from what I saw. But that's definitely an area that you think that they would upgrade in.
Yeah, I agree. He does, like Brad does need to work on that a little bit, because I mean, who do we have scratched right now?
Ruzicka.
Yeah, Ruzicka. Like, and he's not bad. He should probably get in for a game or 2. But at the same time, like, you're right. Ideally, Lewis is a fourth liner. Like, he's been great on our third line right now, but ideally he's a fourth liner, and ideally we have somebody with a little bit more of scoring touch than him, and somebody who can also forecheck and grind and get those pucks out. But no, I do agree. Our forward depth is missing that one right winger still.
Right.
Especially because I really like Lewis as a fourth center as well. So
yeah,
on that fourth line. Yeah.
That's right. But I mean, really, when it comes down to it, who's he replacing? Is he replacing Rooney? Because I mean, Rooney doesn't look bad there either.
no, Rooney looks good. The
Rooney's
fourth
great.
line looks good. But what I think what would be a good thing to do, especially with Lucic being there and Lewis and I mean, not so much Rooney, but if you cycle all those guys out, you give them 2 games in a row off and then put them back in, give the next guy 2 games off, and then put that guy in, give the next guy 2 games, and just kind of cycle through those guys so they're all getting rest too. I think that would just be something I would at least think about doing.
Yeah, you're starting to see guys that are, you just saw Josh Norris for Ottawa. He's out for 4 to 6 months, right? And you're starting to slowly see guys. Yeah, like you're slowly starting to see guys getting on the IR now, and you got to be thinking. You absolutely have to be thinking that you want to start rolling the cycle a little bit, and you've got to keep these guys healthy, and that's why it's important to have some sort of depth come around playoff hunting time, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a huge blow for Ottawa, right? I mean, for the changes they made in this offseason, and I mean they weren't going to be a cup contender by any means, but I thought they potentially could have pushed for a playoff spot this year with the changes they made. But
I thought so too, and I thought that it was really tough that they lost Talbot before the season started.
Yeah, that's huge, right? Yeah, that's
but
huge.
I think the main thing there is making the fan base excited again.
Yeah,
and I think they have done because they're, they might not be winning all the games, but they're getting a lot closer to winning the games than they have in the last few years. So
well, they sold out in their first game where we were playing Boston, and I mean it was a fantastic game. They won like 7-5.
Right.
Like, you can't ask for much more than that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's not a bad opener, right?
Yeah. Speaking of high scoring games, we're going to see a 9-6 pipe game Saturday against who was?
You know what? I hope not. That was probably one of the worst games I've ever seen in my life. That was horrendous. And like as a defensive first person, I do love seeing high flying goals. Don't get me wrong, but that game was gross. Fucking gross.
First thing that came out of my mouth at the end of that game was, that is not sustainable against the Oilers.
No.
And I was just, I had my head in my hands. I was like, if they keep playing like that, this is a lost series, and we were up 1-0 at that point, right? Guess what?
When that series was 1-1, I don't know. I had no confidence, and you got to go to Edmonton, whatever, this is in the past, but there was no shot, and you've seen that those, and then the games that they had onwards, obviously Markstrom didn't play great, but I mean,
defense didn't help.
Exactly, right? And like you guys said earlier, guess what? You want to get to that point, you want to make a run, guess what? You're going to have to go through them eventually, right?
That's right.
Well, speaking of Edmonton, they're up next.
They're up next?
Yeah.
They're up next on Saturday.
You know what, Dylan? I like where you're going with this. Should we stop for a moment?
Yeah. Place some bets on the Edmonton game?
I think so. I got to find a website that can help me place a couple of bets on.
I wonder if they have an over-under on Markstrom glove saves.
I don't know, but they definitely have a draft system that you can bet on. Let's have a word from them.
Yeah.
Hockey fans, it's finally time to hit the ice again, and thanks to DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you're in for the season of a lifetime. New customers can bet $5 on any team and get $200 in free bets if they win. I'm definitely doing it the next Battle of Alberta. If that wasn't enough excitement, you can turn small bets into bigger payouts with same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets like which team will win, how many goals will be scored, and more for your shot at an even bigger payout. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. You can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code THPN. Bet $5 on any NHL team to win their game and get $200 in free bets if they do. That's code THPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. Minimum age, some restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
I don't know, Dylan. That was a pretty good ad. I now know what I'm going to be doing as far as my parlay when it comes to Saturday. Why don't you lead us into it? Who are we playing?
Well, the Edmonton Oilers.
Who?
What are you guys thinking about that? Who gets the start?
It's a start. Well, there's two things to think about. I guess three. Number one, goalie is Markstrom.
Yeah.
Sutter did come out and say that Vladar is going to get one start a week. He hasn't had one for a week.
Play one game a week.
Right. That's true. So will he consider coming in for Markstrom against Buffalo?
Possibly.
Playing during?
I don't know.
It's been more than a week, though.
Yeah.
Third thing is Markstrom absolutely needs to win against the Oilers. I won't say
Yes.
play. He needs to win against the Oilers at some point this
Convincingly,
season.
he needs to make saves.
He needs to
Good
make a
saves.
statement. He needs to make a statement before the end of April and May comes around.
Yeah.
Right? For his
This
own
is the second
confidence, for
last
the
chance.
team's confidence. So that's right.
Yeah.
And
I would say the same. Yeah. Sorry. I mean, like, I'm shocked that Vladar didn't start either Carolina or Pittsburgh. You'd think that, you throw Vladar in against Edmonton the other week, and you're giving him the green light, and you're giving him that confidence, right? So why not send him out against another high caliber team like Pittsburgh or like Carolina? Keep giving him that confidence, right? Maybe instead of playing those games like against the Coyotes or whatever, right? You don't want to have Vladar in. So yeah, but no, I 100% agree. I think Markstrom has to get the start on Saturday, and he's gotta fight off whatever demons that are in his head. And I get regular season is different than playoffs, and it feels different, but he's gotta. I think because they play each other, I think at least 2 or 3 more times. He's got to play at least 2 of them, and he's got to start. It's one thing that it is a regular season game, yes, against the Oilers again. But you gotta get that confidence rolling with him. Especially this early on in the season, you gotta start him on Saturday.
I agree with that. I mean, he, like you said, he needs to get those demons out of his head. And it's not just last playoffs. Like, going back to his time in Vancouver, he's been like borderline abysmal against that team, and he needs to exercise those demons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I did a poll on a Flames Hub, join up Flames Hub on Facebook. Got a few hundred votes on it, and I think it was 65% people wanted Vladar in for Edmonton, and 35 wanted.
And that's all based on past, right? It's all
recency bias, but
right.
Recency, not current. Not
they're,
currency.
They're looking at the last the series we played last year against Edmonton, and because quite frankly, Markstrom looked like dog shit.
Absolutely.
But so did a lot of the team, right?
Yeah. I can understand why they want Vladar on Saturday, just in the sense that like you said, like maybe Sutter's plan is to play him once a week, and okay, maybe I don't necessarily agree with him playing this particular game, but the other side of it is, if you do have to cross Edmonton's path come playoff time, how much of Markstrom do you want to show Edmonton? I mean, clearly I don't know. I just think it's crazy. I think you have to start him on Saturday. You got to get the ball rolling with them.
Well, there's only one more game against Edmonton after tomorrow.
Yeah,
or after Saturday. Yeah.
Well,
and they won't see them until January, February, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But Sutter might start Vladar, so is that we don't put Markstrom in and expose the fact that he has a weak glove side.
Who knows, right? Like
I don't know.
That glove is dangerous. He's been better this the last couple games. I've noticed teams have been targeting that, and he's been catching them. So
He's been better after the first shot against Carolina.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think my big question then going into this game Saturday, and maybe a question to you guys, what's the one thing that you are looking forward to, or what's the one thing you want to see out of this team? You know, win or loss or whatever. What's the one thing you want to see improvement wise?
I want to see an improvement on. You can't say shut down McDavid and Draisaitl because that's fucking borderline impossible. It happens very, very rarely. But what I can say is they got awfully close last game to shutting them down. I think McDavid got 1 point and Draisaitl got 2 or something like that, which is, you know, for most teams, most players, most elite players, like keeping them to that would not be a success, but it is a success against them, I think. But I think that they need to do just a little bit better, maybe keep them to 1 point each, or just really make them concerned as players as to how they're going to play Calgary next. You know what I mean? Instead of having it in their brains that they're going to score 9 goals.
Yeah, and that's one thing that Backlund's kind of made a career out of doing is
pissing McDavid off.
Yeah, making life very difficult for McDavid.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't always, you know, keep him off the score sheet or even keep him to less than a hat trick. But he's very good at shutting him down in key situations and limiting what his offensive production could possibly be.
Yeah.
So that'll be the keys to the game, right? How is our third line going to react to playing against McDavid? Because they're going to get a lot of it, I'm sure, especially being how it's in our barn now. So Sutter gets to decide the line combinations when we get first change. And you know, I'm assuming they're going to put Campbell in. You know, I personally don't think he's that much of an upgrade over Smith.
So I'm not sure if they're putting Campbell in. Last time I checked, there was 5 goals against him against Chicago.
Right.
Today.
Really?
And Skinner,
awesome.
Skinner shut us down the other day, or a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So they might put Skinner in.
That's fair. So how is Skinner going to fare against a hot second line with Kadri or a hot first line that Huberdeau just got his first goal? Like, you know, he's going to be ready to start putting up some offense, and
I think so too.
And you know, Lindholm's going to be right on board with that. He's going to be waiting in the slot area, waiting for that pass. And as we know, he's a hell of a release man when it comes to his shot.
What's your keys to that game, Kyle?
I think, a couple of things I look at. I think I'm very curious to see how Weegar, adjusted. When I was watching it the other week on the Saturday, I was really wondering how Weegar was going to fare, because they were going to get a lot of looks with McDavid and Draisaitl, obviously. And, he was, I want to say, a little bit exposed probably in that second period when you started to notice that they were really coming back. So I'm hoping for a little bit of a bounce back game from Weegar. But, Chris, you said it perfectly with that third line. I think, McBacklin's going to get probably a lot of looks, like you said, with McDavid and really try to piss him off. And I think my only worry with that is now that you have Trevor Lewis on that third line, he's not necessarily the most fastest person in the world.
True.
Where you got, the other guy, right, on the other side, who's going to blow right by it, right? And, I get that a lot of the guys in the league won't be able to really contain that. But, yeah, I think you're right. If you got to find a way to keep getting under their skin, and that's why you bring a guy like Kadri in a little bit too, right? Like we said, we talked about he might be set up for an 80, 90 goal season. Well, guess what? He's going to piss some people off too, right? And I think kind of what we remember, like what we remember from last Saturday too is that him and Kane had a little bit of a scuffle too, right? So I'd like to see how that kind of transpires a little bit into this. But I think ultimately what I want to see is just, you got to find some sort of consistency recently in these past games. You had a bad start against Carolina, early 2-0 lead. Okay, you find a way back. You go to Pittsburgh, best period of the season so far. Followed by probably the worst period of the season, right? So you got to find some sort of consistency throughout all 3 periods. And I'd love to see some sort of 5-on-5 get going there on that first line. So, a couple things that I look at, but ultimately I just want to see some consistency through all these periods.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to see 3 lines worth of production and see how they can move forward. But ultimately, I want to see how 3D pairing can do shutting down an elite offense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's going to be the key. And then whoever ends up starting in net, it's going to be an onslaught. There's going to be some tough minutes, and got to weather that storm and just be prepared.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to say too about what you were saying about the third line is, you're absolutely right. Lewis is not the fastest guy out on the ice, but on the other wing you got Blake Coleman. He's fucking maybe not lightning, but he's pretty fucking quick. And then you look at the second line, you got yourself Dubé, who's fast, and he's really worked on his stability as far as staying up. Mangiapane not so much. He's still quick, but he falls the fuck over all the time. And Kadri on the other line, and then you always have Lindholm on the first. Like, you've got like several
center depth
guys.
has been a thing we've never had before, and it's a real nice feeling having it this year for sure.
On defense,
and,
But when you
quick note, I was just gonna quickly add quick note on Dubé, especially for this season. He's a guy that's gonna really be the one to watch how he's starting to develop as a top 6 guy, and is he going to be a guy that's going to start scoring 20, 25 goals? I know he had a kind of a good start to the season so far, but that's, if out of all the guys that I see on this team, that's the one guy I want to look at and go, this is your time, man. You got to earn your money.
I mean, he's close. He had 18 last year. So he's close. He only needs to take a small step, and I'm not even so worried about how many goals he scores. I'm just really happy to see that he's staying up, because that was and he's hitting the net with his shots. He's skating fast when he's got the puck, and this is one thing I know Chris was really the last few years not super pumped on, was Dubé only skating fast when he had the puck, and now he's skating fast without the puck. So I think he's already taken a step, and he's continuing to take more steps. And I've noticed a lot of communication between him and Kadri. And I mean, if he can turn into even a little bit of what Kadri is, like even a little bit of it, that's fucking great.
Yeah, I agree. I've been the guy that's been harping on Dubé for, I don't know, 3 years, right? I've always hoped that he could prove me wrong. But previous to this year, I'm loving what I'm seeing from him this year. But previous to this year, I always had an issue with what Dylan said there. Going after the puck, he was timid, right? He would get thrown around. He couldn't win a puck battle in the corner. And if he did win a puck battle in the corner and he came out with the puck, he would just get knocked over. Couldn't hit the net. And it appears that he really put in some great effort this off season to improve on these key little points of the game that make or break a career. So I'm pumped with what he's been doing so far, and I really, really hope he keeps it rolling.
Yeah, give him a bigger role and a bigger responsibility than being on that third line, and we're gonna see, right? I just think this is probably going to be the biggest year of his career so far.
100%. I agree with you 100%, because I've been calling him a perennial third line guy, and I've also defended the fact there's nothing wrong with that. There's plenty of those guys in the league, right?
Especially making 2.3 or whatever he's making. That's
exactly
that's third line money.
But if he can take the next step and actually be a middle 6 guy to a top 6 guy, fucking A. Let's go. Why not? Yeah. All right, so that was what, about 15 minutes worth of Oiler talk. Can we quit talking about fucking Oilers now?
Yeah, who's up next?
There's 2 other games, before next, or the Saturday after, and we've got Seattle on Tuesday, Nashville on Thursday.
Yeah. Seattle has not been bad, but you know who has been really bad? UC Staros.
Correct.
Yeah.
Surprisingly enough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which-
and they're also harping on Shane Wright a little bit too, because he's a healthy scratch, is he not?
Was he?
He has been at least twice.
Yeah,
I know
Craziness.
I think his first game he played like 5 or 6 minutes or something, and then they scratched him twice, and then I haven't really paid attention since then, to be honest.
Yeah.
I know there's lots of talk about sending him back down to Kingston, I believe, the Frontenacs in the WHL.
not a terrible idea.
Right? Yeah, get your mind right.
Yeah,
That's really
He's
all you
got
can
an
do.
attitude on him though. Like I'm not like there's a
Yeah.
reason he fell, and since the second, Slavkovsky got taken, I was like, yeah, I mean Slavkovsky's the better player,
Yeah.
and right, he also has a much better attitude, right? Like right, he's going to be a hell of a player for that team, for the Seattle Kraken one of these days, but I feel like one of these days is going to be in like 2 years, 3 years.
Which is normal development, right?
Yeah,
I mean, the elite of the elite make the team right off, and that's great.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But for the most part, draft picks take, 1 to 3 years before they're truly ready to make that leap. So
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
it. It's fine. Just go there, get your mind right, get your attitude right.
Mhm.
That's the main thing, right? I think he's got all the skill. I think it's just, and I think a lot of guys, I know, like even Line had problems with that when he was first drafted. Was like, I'm not getting the minutes I feel I deserve, and they don't realize that there's guys on the depth chart ahead of them that are better than them,
Right.
and you can't
he's-
just step in.
Line still has a little bit of that, right?
He does, yeah.
He still has that bit of, I'm Patrick fucking Line.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
But he's still potting
Yeah.
30 goals when he's been injured half
Yeah.
the season, right? So he is like,
Yeah.
I agree. But he is pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and
true.
look who else he's got on that top line.
I don't want to talk about it.
I know.
Johnny's been doing fucking good over there. But, anyways, the
Um,
team's
I
been
was
doing
gonna
pretty
say real-
fucking brutal.
Yeah, real quick with the Kraken, who's one guy you're going to be looking out for that game?
From the
From
crack.
the Kraken. Yeah, from the
Jaden
Kraken.
Schwartz,
Yeah.
Yeah, eh?
he's been fucking lighting it up.
Yeah.
Hell of a
Damn.
power play guy. Jared McCann has too, but it's mostly Jaden Schwartz I'm worried about. Yeah.
That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking too.
I'm pulling for Matty Beniers. Called
There you
her.
go. There you
He's
go.
got got a hell of a fucking slap shot, like a
It's-
one-timer,
It's
man.
So powerful, man.
He scored
Yeah.
against us in preseason, and like I think it was one of those first shot on Markstrom things. I can't even remember if it was Markstrom, but it was it was a first shot of the game, and I remember watching that, and I was just like, like it was a fucking rocket, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will push back a little bit on that Calder thing, because I gotta say there's like a defenseman who's got 3 points or 2 points over a point per game right now. Kalen Addison in Minnesota, but it's going to be a good race, and obviously I don't think a point per game for a rookie defenseman is very sustainable.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I
mean, I think it's going to be those two right up to the end.
For sure.
I look for a big 10 of crush in the boards.
That's right.
Right. It's gonna
For
be
Veneers?
what? No, Tanev on Tanev.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's
Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
like I go into these games thinking that Brandon Tanev's hurt because
He's always hurt, right?
he's always hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, you Jason, knock on wood here.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But like you mentioned it with Saros, going forward to Nashville now.
Yeah.
He is not. I don't know if it's still that injury that got him right before the playoffs, but something's not right with him. I mean, I think Nashville was up 6-2 last time I checked tonight on St. Louis, but
Right.
I mean, I'd like to believe that he does find a way to turn around the season. I mean, I was looking at him as probably a Vezina candidate, but yeah, I mean, just not the start you want to see from Saros to start the year.
No, he's
No.
not been good. I think part of it could be too, and I'm totally okay with the fact that the league does it, as far as going to Europe. But Man, that kind of travel for people that aren't used to it, I guess he would be used to it because he's from over there, but um, that can really fuck with people. But that's
Yeah.
just a random thought, like probably not because he's
Mhm.
from there, right? So
Yeah.
I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
But you're right,
Yeah.
he's not been doing good. And Yossi, I mean, Yossi's defenseman.
I was gonna quickly mention though, like thinking about again, thinking about back to last year when I was paying close attention to the race between Dallas and Nashville, right? And kind of hoping that, man, I if Saros stays healthy, obviously he got hurt right at the end of it, but that was a team that scared the living shit out of me going into the playoffs because they were hot. Yeah, the Predators they were just hot down the stretch. And, I mean, going into this year and into the game coming up, does McDonough make this team a bit better? I mean, you could argue yes. But I'm waiting for the Duchesne, the other guy, Johansson, right?
Yeah.
Waiting for some sort of cliff, right? Because they had a great year last year. And again, that was a team that really scared the shit out of me going towards the playoffs, a team that I didn't really want to see.
Yeah.
But
talking about not sustainable, how about Johansson and Duchesne's last year, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting to just see the fall, and it just really hasn't happened yet for these guys. So I mean, credit to them, but I'm just wondering, like, even defensively, now that they add McDonough, does he make that defensive core that much better?
I don't know. Are we still recording, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
sorry, my camera went down apparently.
Okay.
So I apologize.
I do think McDonough makes them better and deeper on the blue line. My main thing is, and always has been, is the same. Like, I was talking about this when Yossi was being mentioned in the Norris conversation last year. Last minute of a game, up by one, Yossi isn't on the fucking ice. Ekholm's line is on the ice. Yossi's not that, like, he's a number one power play defenseman, 100%. But that, I think that's one thing that McDonough really helps with, because McDonough's whole thing is that big bruising veteran defenseman. And I do think that helps, but what doesn't help is Saros being like a leaky faucet.
Yeah, and mention it too, man. It's early on in the season. You don't want to see him hurt this early on, right? We're 5-6 games in. You're already seeing that from him. So, I know that sometimes people overlook the first couple of games in the season. Well, guess what? Bite you in the ass come game 72 or something like that, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And that's another, like, the load management thing with Saros. I don't know who they've got as the backup, but last year it was Riddick, and that was one of the reasons why he played so much, right? Like, he's a great goalie, but I mean, Markstrom was a great goalie last year too, and then round 2 of the playoffs he sucked, and Saros didn't even make it to the playoffs, right? That's why I wanted to play Nashville. I wanted to make it to Edmonton or Colorado, whoever we were going to play in the second round. Healthy and in 4 games.
But
well, Lankinen, right, is Nashville.
Lankinen. That's right, because fucking Chicago can't figure out what a rebuild is.
And apparently Nashville doesn't like anybody that's not from Finland, right?
Yeah.
And rightfully so.
Let's rebuild. Let's trade away our 21-year-old 40-goal scorer.
Right.
Along with DeBrink. Yeah. Like,
that's what I mean. DeBrincat, right? Like,
wild.
2-time 40-goal scorer, 21 years old. Right. Doesn't that seem like the piece to rebuild around, not the piece to trade?
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if there is an issue with him in the room.
Maybe. I don't know. He seems to be liked in Ottawa, but
okay, but like, I got to go on this quick rant for a second though.
Do it.
And so we think about Chicago giving away all these pieces, right? Brinkat goes, Doc goes, Lincoln goes, blah blah blah, right?
Doc too,
yeah. So GM, fairly new GM, went to the same school as him. Not a big deal,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So it makes me wonder, and I know I briefly talked about Kane early on. I have been harping at this for months now, understanding that Kane's contract comes to an end, I believe, this year.
Yeah.
And so, again, December, January is going to roll around. We're going to see how this top six does. We're going to see how Toffoli does, blah, 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 right? But if you want to ask me right now if this team's going to go on this kind of deep run with the team that they have, I can't say yes. Because when tooth and nail comes, come game one, come game two, come game four, whatever, who's going to be the guy that puts the puck in the net? And again, I know I briefly mentioned it earlier, but whether it be Kane or someone else, you got to find somebody who's able and willing to do that, who that's their DNA and that's who they are. So
in the playoffs, which is why Kane is on ice is that guy, right?
Yeah,
it does make sense. And he's a right winger. And
yeah. So that's where I'm looking at Chicago. And if you can push the buttons of Bill Zito like you did in Florida, what makes you think you can't do it with this guy, a fairly new GM in Chicago, who's getting rid of pieces like there's no tomorrow with DeBrincat and Doc, right? There's no reason why you can't go talk to this guy a couple months down the road and say, what's it going to take? A couple draft picks, a high prospect, and maybe a top 6, top 4 defenseman?
Yeah.
And who you want to lose, maybe that's a conversation for another day. But I gotta think that
I hear Shillington's coming back to town, eventually. At some hopefully at some point before now in January.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like that's yes, I agree with that. Like I'm not sure if Kane is the guy, but I do think that again on paper Kane's great for that.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is we were just discussing this yesterday, I think. We have a projected $6 million in cap at the deadline, I believe. So we wouldn't even have to put Kane through another team. We just have to get Kyle Davidson. Is that his name?
Yeah, Davidson. Yeah.
So we'd have to get him to hold, 50% of what's left on that, and which is only like 2.5 mil, right?
Yeah.
So that's definitely worth thinking about. And he's a guy who has proven to put up big numbers in playoffs. And
that's what I think about. Yeah.
Moving all in for the last quarter of the season and the playoffs, and then he leaves. If we win a cup, I don't give a fuck.
You think Masai Ujiri cared with the Raptors afterwards after they lost Kawhi?
Yeah.
No. And I think, we've had how many years of first, second round exits, and at some point you've got to pull the trigger. I get they kind of did it in the last trade deadline with Yarncroke and with, the other guys that they picked up at Toffoli and that. Yeah.
They're still middle six guys, right? They're still middle six guys.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And we've been looking for a first line winger for how fucking long? We had that great first line last year, but for most of Kachuk's career, he was on the second line, with whatever iteration of the 3M line we had, which was always a great line. But we had Monahan and Gaudreau for years, and we didn't have a first line winger, and we tried fucking James Neal, and we tried Frolik, and we tried Brower, and we tried fucking Richie, and that's why the fan base hates Richie, because he was put somewhere where he wasn't going to succeed. And we do need that legitimate first line player. And again, with Toffoli, he could very well end up being that, but I don't have
I could eat my own words. Yep.
Yeah, I don't have a bunch of confidence, because 7 years ago, I've said this 5 times now, but 7 years ago, he had a career high 58 points. That is not first line numbers.
Right. Yeah.
That was 7 years ago, a career high.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'll ask you, Chris, to just bring you in a little bit. Do you believe that they're one piece away from saying, you know what, this is it?
I think they're 2 pieces away from it.
Okay, fair enough.
I 100% believe that we need an actual true top line winger. Sorry. I mean, I will defend what Toffoli has been and what he's done so far. I will defend that for sure. But I agree with you, Kyle, that we're not making second, third round in the playoffs with what's happening right now.
Yep.
Right? Because we need 5-on-5 scoring, right? As we know,
which will come. It'll come.
Absolutely. I'm not exactly. I'm not saying it won't come, but as we all know, the whistles kind of go away a little bit in the playoffs, and so there's going to be less opportunity for power play goals and shit like that, right?
So that didn't happen last year, but
that's true. Yeah. The Dallas series kind of got out of hand, and then
a little bit. Holy smokes!
Right, and thanks number 19, because holy fuck, like I've never seen a player focus more on being a dipshit instead of just playing the game.
You must not have been paying attention to the Leafs back when Kadri was there. Anyways.
Yeah. Like I was so angry with Tkachuk last year.
I was too. He
really
shouldn't have.
Me off.
Yep.
And Klingberg, not even the other team's best defenseman.
Exactly.
Yep. And guess what? He's happy riding golf carts down in Florida now. So good for him.
Good for him.
Right.
Good for him.
So what's the other piece you're looking at, Chris?
Yeah, I'm goaltending.
Backup?
No.
Really interesting.
I kind of thought you were going to say that just because of your whole thing 2 years ago when we first picked up Markstrom.
I mean, we're what now 3 years into his contract. Well, we're in the third year of his contract.
Right.
And, I mean, he hasn't proved me wrong yet. He's been great in the regular season, but I'm still super angry with how he performed in the second round of the playoffs last year.
Yep.
Like he's supposed to be our number one guy. And
he should have had fucking 8 of those.
Yes.
And 6 of those 8 were in the exact same place.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, signing him to the 6-year deal and making every single one of those years a no move, not a modified, just a straight no move. It's just fuck you, Brad. What are you thinking? Number one, because he had never really proven to be a winner while playing in Vancouver.
Right.
So, how do you give him that contract?
But look at them without him now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Look at them without Tanev.
Yeah.
That's the main thing, I think, over there.
Look at them without a lot of things. Look at them without a coach. Look at them without a proper GM. Vancouver's a fucking mess.
Yeah.
I spend zero amount of my time thinking about Vancouver.
Yeah.
My focus is on our team and Markstrom, you know what? Like his regular season play has been phenomenal. It's great. But when it really comes time to get into the mental space of playoffs, you could tell that he's just on edge. He's just not smooth. He's not himself. And so until he can get out of his own brain, we can add fucking 25 top line players. It's not going to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
can agree.
I quickly, very quickly, I agree. I agree with everything that you say. I think playoff experience also plays a factor, right? And you know what? Maybe he needs to go through the ringer and go do that.
Yep.
My counter to that a little bit would be, you got Kemper to win a Stanley Cup, right? Out in Colorado. And I get,
with one eye.
Right. And I get you have Makar, you have McKinnon, you got all these guys, right? And, Makar's the second coming of Jesus for all we know, right? But I just think that I really believe playoff experience is a major factor. And I get that, I totally get that. I think mentality-wise, he was not there that second round.
Right.
And I think learning from that, and you get a little bit of experience, maybe Kadri comes in and, gives him some sort of talk or something like that, right? Yeah. I just think that over the years of teams, their journey to win the cup, it took them a shitload of kicks in the can, right? It took Tampa a bunch. It took Chicago, a bunch. For Tampa, frig, they lost 4-0 in a first round series against Columbus.
Yeah.
Right. So my point to that is I think it takes a shitload of kicks in the can. And, as much as I would love to find a better goaltender maybe than Markstrom, you got to find some sort of trust in him and keep installing that confidence in him to try to, get him to learn from his mistakes, and we'll see what happens. Right. So I agree. Yeah.
I can agree with you 100%. I don't necessarily think that we need to get rid of Markstrom. I think before this team moves forward, Markstrom needs to move forward. You're exactly
absolutely.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to say something.
Like the first series last year, Markstrom was phenomenal against Dallas.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it just got in his head in that round too, and holy fuck, what a disaster that was.
And like what we're talking about now is the same as we were talking about, and I'll go back to it. With Edmonton coming up on Saturday, why do the three of us want to start Markstrom? Because he's got to get that shit out of his head, and in the playoffs, he's got to get that shit out of his head. And I do believe that if it wasn't Edmonton, I do believe that if Colorado, like maybe we wouldn't have won, but it wouldn't, like if we were playing against Colorado, we would have done way better against Colorado than we did against Edmonton. Not because Edmonton's a better team, but because of Markstrom's head.
I mean, we have historically over the last few years done a hell of a lot better against Colorado than they've done against us.
Yeah.
We've been doing it. I remember an afternoon game, it was like 5 years ago at the Dome, and I think it was 7-1 or 8-2. Like we've really done well against them. Not to say that we would in a playoff environment, but we've really held our own against an elite team. Because every time you see it on the calendar, you're like, oh, here comes Colorado, and we've been thinking that for a couple of years, right?
They are a really good team. They're just they're not in Markstrom's head like fucking Edmonton is.
That's right.
And one other thing I want to say about Markstrom too is like maybe part of it was that he knew the coach didn't have that much trust in Vladar, and that, like, I'm not saying it was a huge factor in it, but it could have been part of it, right? That he knew that no one was knocking on the door to get that next start. Whereas if Vladar keeps playing like how he has over the last few weeks here, when he does get starts, then in the playoffs, like maybe Markstrom's going to be like extra motivated because he doesn't want to lose that next start. He doesn't want to lose the rest of this series as far as starts are concerned, because the other guy's doing better.
Yeah, absolutely. And with a couple of year contract that Vladar just signed, it just proves that, there's competition there, and quite
confidence
frankly,
for the coaching staff.
Absolutely. And I feel comfortable putting in Vladar in any game. Any game
that Markstrom, I'd feel just as comfortable with either of them. I'm fucking pumped on our goalies.
Like last year, Dylan, you and I had a conversation numerous times about Vladar. The puck tracking seemed to be lacking, but he was a good positional goalie, which was nice. But I mean, once it bounced off him, he had no idea where it went.
Yeah,
but
his head is following.
Weird. But this year, he actually knows where things are going, which is a really refreshing thing to see from your goaltender.
Man.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, there it is, guys. So, what do you think? What do we all think the next 3 games are going to bring us as far as potential points?
Points wise, well, first of all, I was thinking about my heartbeats per minute. I think it's going to go up and down on Saturday, and then we'll be fine after that. I mean, maybe 1 or 2. I honestly, I see a win in these next 3 games. I don't know why. I have no reasoning behind it.
I can 100% see it going 3-0 over the next 3 games, to be honest.
Yeah. Love your confidence.
What did I say last time? Because it seemed to work out pretty good for us.
Yeah, I think you had us losing every game. You're always-
something stupid like that, right? No,
Way to bring
I
it
think
down.
I said 1-0-1, and then we ended up winning both of them.
I think that sounds right, actually.
Yeah.
That does sound right.
Who all are we got? We got Edmonton and Nashville, and who else?
Seattle.
Seattle. Nashville and Seattle are wins for sure. So fuck it, 3-0.
Right?
Wish I had your confidence.
Heard it here first, 3-0.
Nice.
You know what? Saturday I'm going to be at a Halloween party, and it's going to be a lot of fun watching that because I'm pretty sure I'm going to be drinking beer out of a jerry can. Unrelated story, but I don't think my level of care is going to be all that high.
Oh God.
It's gonna be a good show. So
Cool.
it's gonna be fun, but at least the party that I'm going to, the house is a hockey house, and so the game will
They'll have
definitely
it
be
on.
on. So I'm excited about that.
That's all that matters.
Yeah, and there'll be a lot of celebrating over the game, I'm sure. That's my prediction there. Knocked on some wood. And then Tuesday, that's the only one that actually truly I could see us taking somewhat lightly because of the record last year. So as long as they don't take Seattle lightly, I think we can take it to them.
You know, my other thing is like, honestly, the Kraken haven't been doing too bad. And they'll probably play Grubauer against us. I feel like Calgary does this thing where they make backup goaltenders look like they're fucking Vezina caliber goalies, basically.
Yep.
And how about that Kevin Langton kid?
I want to talk about it.
Yeah, let's not talk about that.
Yeah.
No.
Fuck you, Dylan.
3-0.
Jesus.
3-0.
Way to bring the mood of the room down.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. That's what we need.
But like,
bad.
look at Stuart Skinner, right? Like he came in after one period, like after half a period, and fucking stonewalled us.
Yeah.
Right. Luckily, we'd already scored enough to win, but
Exactly.
you know,
Yeah. What
does it matter?
Yeah.
Right. What does it matter?
Just get Brett Ritchie to light him up. That's all you need.
Yeah. Or get Rooney to accidentally bump into him.
Brett Ritchie, straight up, like on a couple plays this year, he's looked like fucking David Pastrnak with that one timer. You know what I mean?
How many penalties has he drawn this year? Is it 4? I'm pretty sure he's drawn 4 penalties.
He drew 4 penalties in one period, dude. And then he drew another one last game.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's so good to see, right? You know, the kid's he's keeping his feet moving, creating plays, creating penalties. It's beautiful.
And he's scoring. Cheers to Brett Ritchie. How about that? Let's finish off on that.
Cheers to Brett Ritchie.
Cheers to fourth liner, not first liner, Brett Ritchie.
Right?
Yeah. The only guy without alcohol. Or sorry, yeah.
No, I don't either.
Oh, good.
Way to single me out.
I usually do. I just
we'll join
had a bit of a week with the drinking, so.
All right. So on that note, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Make sure you smash the subscribe and don't forget to ring the notification bell if you're on Spotify, if you're on Apple, if you're on iHeart. Give the show a download. Don't forget to follow the Hockey Podcast Network on all your socials, on all your podcast networks. And until we talk to you guys again next week, cheers.
Cheers. Go Flames, go.
Go Flames, go.